As an Irish Republican party, Sinn Féin's origins are in the long history of resistance to British rule in Ireland, the struggle for Irish independence, and in the movements that have carried on that struggle, beginning in 1791 with the Society of United Irishmen, and subsequent movements right throughout the 19th century into the last century and up to the present have struggled in their own way, in their own time, to achieve a free and independent Ireland. But through it all, the basic ideas of Irish republicanism have remained, and they've been adapted by the republicans of those generations in their own time. And just to look first of all at the origins in the Society of United Irishmen and Wolfe Tone, one of the founders of the United Irishmen. Ireland in the 18th century was ruled, of course, by the British government from Dublin Castle. It was a deeply divided and unequal society. The vast majority of people lived as rural peasants who were eking out a very meagre living from the soil. They had been dispossessed in the 17th century and throughout the 18th century. The majority were Catholics, the majority were landless, and a small minority of landlords and their supporters and the British garrison ruled the country. Wolfe Tone and others founded the United Irish Society in 1791 with the aim initially of reforming the Irish Parliament, which represented the tiny minority in Ireland at the time who ruled, and with the aim of uniting the people of different religions in the cause of civil rights, civil liberties, and eventually Irish independence. Wolfe Tone set out his ideas very clearly in his diaries and his other writings, and they are a very important legacy for us. His most important statement probably was when in his autobiography he set out what his aim was. And he said it was to subvert the tyranny of our execrable government, to break the connection with England, the never-failing source of all our political evils, and to assert the independence of my country. These were my objects. To unite the whole people of Ireland, to abolish the memory of all past dissension, and to substitute the common name of Irishman in place of the denominations of Protestant, Catholic and Dissenter. These were my means. The division of Ireland, the oppression of Ireland, was accomplished by the British government in one way through sectarian discrimination. Catholics and to a lesser extent Presbyterians were discriminated against in the law in terms of freedom of religion, civil rights, the right to jobs, the right to political representation. And the only ones with political power were a minority who happened to be of the established church, the official church of the British state. And these divisions were used by the English government in Ireland to consolidate its own rule. And Wolfe Tone and the United Irishmen, their aim was to unite the people in the name of Irish men and Irish women. The Society of United Irishmen was suppressed and banned by the British government, and Wolfe Tone travelled to France to seek aid from the revolutionary government in France for an Irish insurrection. And he managed, in fact, to secure 3 separate French expeditions to Ireland, which proved unsuccessful. And in the final one, Wolfe Tone was captured off Donegal, brought to Dublin under arrest, and died in British prison. He said in his diary at one stage that our independence must be had at all hazards. If the men of property will not support us, they must fall. We can support ourselves by the aid of the most numerous and respectable class of the community, the men of no property. And he was recognising there that British oppression in Ireland fell most heavily on the mass of the people of no property. And that's something that Republicans have remembered and marked ever since. But what were the basic ideas and the legacy of Tone and the United Irishmen for us today? Well, first of all, they were separatist. They wanted a complete separation from Ireland and Britain and Irish independence. They were Republican, so they wanted a state that was ruled by the people with no monarchy. They were democratic, so they sought a government elected by the people. And they were anti-sectarian. And this is extremely important because the struggle for Irish freedom, right from Tone's time up to the present, has been portrayed often by the British government and others as a sectarian conflict or a conflict about religion. And this has never been the case. As we said, the British government has used religion and sectarian division to divide the people, to divide and conquer, the age-old tactic of empires. But the struggle in Ireland has always been about Irish independence. It's been about the control of the land, of economic division and inequality. And sectarianism has been used. The United Irish Society sought to end sectarianism and to create a common citizenship of Irish people regardless of religion. And the tradition they represent from the French Revolution and progressive thinking right through until our present time is anti-sectarian, it's anti-racist, it's feminist, it believes in the equal rights of all people, and that's fundamental to what Irish Republicans stand for. The United Irish Rebellion in 1798 was followed by the Act of Union, the abolition of the Irish Parliament, and in 1803 Robert Emmet, who was a United Irishman, attempted a rebellion in Dublin. And again we see in Robert Emmet's proclamation the ideas of republicanism. His 1803 proclamation says, "We therefore solemnly declare that our object is to establish a free and independent republic in Ireland, that the pursuit of this object we will relinquish only with our lives, that we will never, unless at the express call of our country, abandon our post until the acknowledgement of its independence is obtained from England." And in Emmet's proclamation, again, the equality ethos of the United Irishmen is very clear. We can move along then in the 19th century to other key Republican thinkers and writers. The issue, of course, of the land, of who owned the land, the fact that the mass of the people were impoverished, landless or with very small land holdings, eking out a very precarious existence on the land, that the country was ruled essentially by landlords. This was very much to the fore in the struggle in the 19th century. And as a result of that, we had the Great Hunger on Gorta Mór, when 1 million people died from hunger and disease and a further 1 million emigrated, and we had emigration rolling on right throughout the 19th century, the late 19th century and into the 20th century. One of the great thinkers of that time was James Fintan Lalor, and he wrote in 1848, Ireland her own, and all therein from the sod to the sky. The soil of Ireland for the people of Ireland, to have and to hold from God alone who gave it. The entire ownership of Ireland, moral and material, up to the sun and down to the centre, is vested of right in the people of Ireland, that they and none but they are the landowners and the lawmakers of Ireland.